All right, why don't we get started? 7:45.
Thank you.
Everybody paying attention? I'm going to say good morning. So good morning.
Good morning.
That's good. I'm glad you did that because that helps me understand that everybody is awake and ready to go. Welcome to the Future of TV. Wall Street analysts meet industry executives. It's all about innovation and disruption, chasing the new normal in the entertainment and technology industries. Glad you're here. What I'd like to do in starting out is read the short description we have of the panel because I think it puts into context what we're going to be talking about. So we're in a period of rapid, if not accelerating change in the way that content of all kinds is produced, distributed, and consumed. In the past, no matter what kind of content, well-defined distribution windows were normal and were followed consistently by distributors. That's no longer the case. Those distribution windows and other barriers have been broken and will never be repaired or returned to what was normal. Companies, some new and disruptive, and others who have long been mainstream players are searching for what might be the new normal as a means of attracting an audience to their offerings in the increasingly fragmented marketplace. The future of TV, topic of this panel, involves deep insight into both the qualitative and quantitative aspects of content production and distribution and the impact that the technology may have on the many competitive and high-stakes business models in place today and anticipated for tomorrow, shaped in part by the myriad of devices and content vying for our attention, as well as the potential impact of government regulations, something that's become more and more prevalent in my opinion. Our distinguished group of analysts and executives will discuss, debate, and even challenge some of the basic premises that are important as we look to the future of TV and what we hope to be and expect to be an informative and engaging panel. I want to ask each of the panelists to take a moment to let you know a little bit about who they are, what they do, and how it fits into the topic. And we're going to start at my near left here. Martin Libich, who did a great job. His boss, Tom Burns, lives in Canada, had a little trouble getting over the border yesterday. Martin ably stepped in, is going to do a fine job today. He got the quiz yesterday just to be sure he was up to it. Martin, go ahead, please, from EMC.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Martin Liebisch. My title officially is Corporate Advisory Engineer for Media and Entertainment with EMC's Emerging Technology Division. I have to practice that. And I'm a technologist within EMC's storage division, focused on the entertainment market. I consider myself very fortunate that I get to work, I'm going to say, with all of you, and work with the local studios, local content, and all across North America, content distribution and broadcasters. I'm from the industry. I started in post-production editorial and was fortunate enough to accidentally slip into my technologist role and have been working in Europe and North America. And as a hobby, I invent technology.
As a hobby.
As a hobby,
All
purely
right.
as a hobby.
And to his left, Justin Liu from Akamai.
Hi, my name is Justin Liu. I'm from Akamai Technologies. I'm a lead engagement manager for the technical consultants that are project managers and engagement managers for media and gaming customers out west. So obviously we're heavily involved in the content deliveries for most of the major companies out that have a West Coast presence. We're in pretty interesting times with a shift to how we view television, and obviously Akamai's in the middle of a lot of the delivery.
Okay, and to his left, Gene Munster, Piper Jaffray.
Good morning. So I'm not an industry person. I come from the finance background and work with Travis, who's with me here today. And we cover large companies like Apple and Facebook and Google. And a lot of them, even Amazon, have ambitions in the living room. And so based on that coverage, we look at it as how these companies are going to have an impact on the existing businesses up here. And financially, what does that mean for stocks?
Okay, and to his left, Larry Namer.
Hi, Larry Namer, probably best known either good or bad for bringing you Kardashians and things like that. Founder of E! Entertainment Television here in the U.S. For the last 5 years, have been involved in China, building a media company there that does film, television, and everything else.
And everything else. Michael Pachter to his left, please.
I'm Michael Packer. I'm not as young, not as smart, and not as good-looking replica of Gene. I don't cover all the same companies. I don't cover any of the like Apples or Googles. I do cover the social media companies and non-traditional media companies. So I cover Pandora, Netflix. I do cover Amazon. I think primarily as a media company, Zynga, King, video game guys, movie theaters. And I have a very strong view about the topic, so happy to talk today.
Not surprisingly. And to his left, Dunia Turil.
Yeah, Dunia Turil. So I'm currently between two chairs. I was formerly Senior Vice President of Client Insights for Nielsen, and I'm about to move over to the network side and the research department at the network at Fox. I am a media trends, media consumption expert, really focusing on consumer behavior around adoption and use of media and the platforms.
Okay, and my name is Marty Schindler of the Schindler Perspective. We have a husband and wife consulting team working with companies all along the entertainment and entertainment technology value chain. Our backgrounds include a Big Four professional service firm, top 5 business school, and additional experience at companies such as Fox, MGM, Lucasfilms, Industrial Light and Magic, Kodak, Cinesite, and Bank of America. Follow us on @MartySchindler on Twitter. So do a quick poll. How many people here are involved in production or post-production? How many people are involved in finance, either brokerage, research, or the like? Okay. How about people who are involved in, what did I miss? Production, post-production. How many people work at one of the companies that we've talked about already today? Netflix, Michael mentioned. Anybody here from that? How many people are still courting? Are still only one person who still has a corded television versus, over the top only, streaming only. Okay.
You could be a hybrid, though.
Well, you can be corded and still. Yeah, but you live in Maryland, so it might be a little bit different there than it is. That was just being funny. Okay, so let's get on innovation and disruption as part of the topic title. It's all about innovation in the media and tech industries. Some say that companies should disrupt before they are disrupted, especially given the speed with which technology is evolving. Netflix has been disruptive, I should say. Even the venerable Walmart, as well as other retailers, some of which are important to the entertainment industry, have been disrupted by Amazon. So what do these mainstream and other companies need to be thinking about to be sure they're not disrupted in the coming years? How does Netflix cope with the slowdown in its growth? And what is the likely impact of the announced price increase on new subscribers? Michael?
I'm the biggest bear on Wall Street on Netflix, so everything I say, please take with a grain of salt. I don't cover stocks and hope that I'm right. I know I'm right. But I don't actually hope that what I say is going to happen is going to happen. I actually hope investors make money. The Netflix is raising price inevitably because the content guys have a vested interest in extracting every last ounce of flesh from them. So the idea that any of the content guys would give their content away is just ludicrous. And the idea that Netflix can capture the economic rent from reselling someone else's content is ludicrous. There's no form of distribution of video content where the creator doesn't get compensated fairly. They can pull their content. And Amazon is creating an option for people. I think this price increase, coupled with a guide down for earnings for the subsequent quarter, followed by a comment that Netflix has to raise capital, tells you that the price increase is in response to the cash burn. I don't think it's going to impact subscriber growth very much at all. I frankly think Netflix is a bargain at $8 and $9, you know, depending on when you joined, and I think it continues to be a bargain at $10. And I think the first time we're going to see any vulnerability from the price increase is May 9th, 2016. Write the date down, because if you've been a Netflix customer since pre-May 9th, 2014, that's when your price goes up from $7.99 to $9.99. I think people may notice, but I would guess price elasticity of demand is less than half, meaning a price increase of 11% means a decline in subscribers of less than 5%, and my guess is it'll be 2%, and we won't even notice. So what a bargain, what a great company. The service is amazing. I honestly think it is a phenomenal value and would be at $15 or $20, and I think most people feel that way. It's just that if Netflix charges $20, I think they suffer the same fate as if your local AMC theater charges $20 for a Star Wars ticket. They don't get a break on film rent. It goes up if they charge more. So I think Netflix is going to see content costs continue to rise. They will be a profitable company. They will be here 15, 20 years from now. It's just I don't think they're going to be trading at $40 or $50 billion. I think they're going to look a lot more like other distributors of content.
Michael, I have a question. So I don't know much about Netflix, but I sit in these meetings with investors and other analysts who cover Netflix, and they get in these debates, and I kind of sit back and just take it all in. And I'm curious that I have no idea what the impact of kind of their exclusive content has, and is that just too small in the grand scheme of the overall cost to really move the needle?
Well, it's too small in the overall quantity of what they offer, but not in the long run. In the long run, they're doing exactly the right thing. So, you know, if you look at HBO, you can go to HBO Go and count the series. There's something like 75 original series that are available. Netflix is up to 23, and they've announced 38 more. So they're catching up. I mean, they'll be at 75 in 4 or 5 years. It's just, will they be good series? I don't know. Will people know about them? I don't know. It's hard for Netflix to promote their content the way HBO does, because HBO, every single interstitial, you guys may have noticed movies aren't exactly 2 hours long, and TV shows are never exactly 60 minutes long. So, you know, I watched Homeland last night on DVR. It ended at 52 minutes, and there were 8 minutes of promo for the next Showtime show. Netflix can't do that. I mean, they might try, but people don't even know that Narcos is out. How many people have heard of, forget seen, Bloodline? Yeah, okay. And how many people are Netflix subscribers? So twice as many. It's hard, and Bloodline, I think, is probably the best piece of content I've seen on Netflix. But you don't know about it because the press got bored. They don't report on that anymore. This week's story is Beasts of No Nation, because it's a movie. They just don't talk about TV shows anymore, and they're not going to talk about the next 38. So I actually think the original strategy, the right strategy, hard to differentiate, and it didn't differentiate HBO in the 80s when they had tons of it. Maybe in the 90s with Larry Sanders. It wasn't until The Sopranos that people started really talking about HBO originals, and that was 20 years into that. I think Netflix is going to bury itself with the cost of developing this stuff, but I don't think quantity is going to be enough.
You know, they're going to probably find what a lot of other companies have found. In my first job in the entertainment industry, umpteen years ago, more than take off that word teen, I was tracking and reporting the profitability of the film slate at Fox and then at a subsequent studio. I think they're going to learn, or let me ask it as a question. You think Netflix, you've mentioned, and Hulu, and Amazon Prime, and others who are getting into original content are going to find that same challenge, that it's not as easy as they think?
I mean, there's a reason that there's 7 big film studios, because it's freaking hard, you know, and it takes, you need a lot of capital and you need to fail a lot. I actually think Ted Sarandos at Netflix is a really capable guy, but he ran a DVD distribution business before he worked for Netflix. So all of his learning is on the job. HBO is staffed by Warner Brothers executives, and they actually know how to make content. Amazon is making 6 pilots about every 6 or 7 months and letting their Prime members vote, and so which is really smart. But it's hard to get this right. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about all the TV shows that flop. It's really hard to make good content.
Larry, would you agree with that? You've made a lot of content.
Yeah, I think it's hard to make good content, but I mean, first of all, I will argue with that original content didn't change HBO in the 70s. I hate to say it, that I was actually there.
79, I joined.
I was there 72 when Jerry Levin came in and did it.
I didn't have credit then, or I
There
would've
was,
been a subscriber.
there was a lot of stuff there. I mean, Robin Williams was discovered, Bette Midler, I mean, just on and on and on through HBO original comedy series. But the overall effect of Netflix, I'll tell you from the creative community, is it's absolutely raised the bar on what quality is. I mean, Ted Sarandos has done amazing in, he may not know how to produce television or anything, but he knows how to pick the right people to do it. And that's really caused a ripple throughout the industry from HBO and everybody else to have to do better stuff. I mean, so now when we go through script reviews and stuff like that, I mean, we are so much more careful about really making something special since the advent of Netflix. So that's kind of rippled through. I'm a Netflix subscriber, and I will say that the $2 means absolutely nothing to me. There's no way I'm going to even think about that one.
But you're going to be grandfathered in for a while.
May 9th.
Well, even if I had to pay, I'm okay with it.
All right, Martin, you've got something on this?
Well, the thing that I want to postulate, and I'm happy to sort of put that up for discussion, is the concept that Netflix is a content company comes from the consumer model that we perceive at the end of the day, or actually at the beginning, and to this day, Netflix is a traditional Silicon Valley startup, which means that their true capital from the beginning has been their analytics and the way that they process user data and then actually strategically benefit from that. So I think when we're talking about both the marketing aspect, but also the way that Netflix understands their audience, they're in a completely different position because they've never had to guess. They've never had to guess what their audience wants. They've always made it the core of their business to be extremely good at getting their operations just right. From those of you that remember when you were renting DVDs through Netflix, that happened a while ago, and the most popular titles were the ones that were almost hard to get, and that was all that operational efficiency that was based on computational models and based on analytics. So now that they have not just the information of what people like, but the exact viewing habits, they're maintaining that, and they didn't have to sort of that studio model. They didn't have to garner this additional information or put that on top of their savoir-faire. They've always had it, and they continue to build that capital. So I think we're coming into an age where what they're doing now as marketing may be more something where they're celebrating a success of something that they know more than they tell us about.
Anyway, we're going to move on. We'll talk about over the top a little bit more specifically. Notwithstanding some logical and sometimes pervasive arguments that the current delivery of the majority of our content is still and will be by traditional means for some time to come, OTT is here to stay, and it is increasing its reach with more and more content available through OTT, even that which is available by traditional means, as well as a significant number of OTT-only services that are drawing very large online audiences, including events such as Twitch that's out there. Even several traditional outlets are moving towards OTT. CBS has made a lot of content available. Turner announced Super Deluxe, the free advertiser-supported venture that will target men 18 to 34. But for OTT to continue its expansion, what are some of the underlying enablers and barriers for OTT services, including some of the tech challenges and the changing business models that will be out there? What if the changes really begin to accelerate? So what are the enablers, what are the barriers that will be there for the path of OTT?
I'll say one of the enablers that I've been, I guess it's not quite an enabler because I've been so wrong on this topic, but I prophesized that Apple would have all-in-one panel TV, smart TV for years. And on Monday, they're going to come out, it's pre-orders on their new version of the Apple TV, which I'm sure we're all aware of. They've been running around, I think it's 10 million units a year, their current run rate. So it's pretty small, but if you could step that up and get that to be maybe going from 10 to 20 million, 130 million households in the U.S., you start to see that as potentially a mainstream tipping point. When we've met with Apple, they've talked about this importance of getting that box out in as many living rooms as possible because that's a frontier that they still haven't capitalized on. So I would say that there's a potential that even though Roku and Xbox and some of these other devices to get OTT a reality, I think that that's just going to accelerate here in the coming months.
And can the technology that's out there support it? Is there adequate storage? Is there adequate network from an Akamai point of view, for example?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point because as, say, Apple, for example, delivers more hardware products into the home, as well as whichever device, your iPad, your laptop, there's only so much connectivity in a household. So you really need to make sure that that delivery from wherever the content's being sourced from to your house is as efficient as possible. And it's that juxtaposition right now where, as we shift to OTT, people are still used to watching TV the way they see it today. We're buying bigger and bigger TVs, 65-inch, 70-inch. Some people are hitting over 100 if you're lucky enough. But there requires a lot of bandwidth in order to supply that high quality throughout the whole household. Buffering. Buffering is not something that you see in regular TV, at least if you're running things properly. And so being able to maximize those pipelines and figuring out maybe even other things that you can do within the household in the future to help maximize that. And the connections, I don't know how many times you've had the same frustrations I've had. Maybe Comcast or whichever your ISP is, there's only really so much pipe that you can bring into the house, and you want to get that full pipe and bring as much as you can. And that's not a overnight effort and takes a lot of planning.
So that speaks to one of the challenges that's out there to get those pipes where they need to be to get, if all of a sudden everybody went OTT, there would be a challenge if it happened overnight.
Indeed. Whereas we're seeing 4K TV and all the higher quality come out, even getting good 4K TV in your household, it's not easily doable today. If you want to download a full 4K movie, it's not going to be available at the snap of your finger that you'd expect otherwise.
Dunia, you've been the one who typically espouses the fact that TV is going to continue under traditional means, that not to the exclusion of OTT, but the majority of the content is still out there delivered through traditional means. What do you see happening, and where is that going to go in the future?
So I still hold on to that premise, maybe sometimes a little wavering, more so than a few years ago. That being said, and I always say this, right? It's about consumer experience with content, with delivery. So as soon as the consumer has either a consistent issue or consistent success at getting what they want when they want, that's the tipping point. In terms of over-the-top versus traditional, right? It's to me they're coming onto the same road, right? It's all about what is coming into your home and how it's coming in. So technology enables over the top where 10, 15 years ago that was not an option. Is it any different than cable or satellite or telco? It's just an additional option for the consumer. And I think the sooner we really take a look at it in the ecosystem of how the adoption is, what the success rate is, the better off we are as an industry. Then you have the content that comes in, right? So over the top is is wonderful as a theory, as a concept, but what is it over the top for? What is it bringing in? So is it bringing in kind of an app world where you have HBO Go and you have Netflix and you have Hulu and Amazon Prime and then any other company that's out there? So then you move to, I think, authentication, and that to me still is an interesting piece of the puzzle that traditional media companies and the the traditional delivery platforms have not really figured out to the benefit of the consumer, right? So the consumer experience around authentication is still not a very positive one. And I think that in terms of a hurdle that needs to be overcome is one of the biggest challenges, and one that will give some of that control and ownership of the content and ownership of the distribution, will give it back to the big media companies.
Michael?
You're absolutely right, and I think the media companies control their destiny, and so sometimes they do the dumbest things. I do think collectively they are the smartest guys in the room, but they do the dumbest things. So HBO has been both idiotic and super smart. They went direct over the top with HBO Now, and then they licensed their content to Amazon in a 3-year window, meaning 3 years late. That's super smart. So I think the way to control over the top and preserve their maximum profit pool is to time the content and let the over-the-top providers have it later, not real time. Because if you let people have Monday Night Football over the top, it's going to be hard to maintain that billion-dollar fee you pay the NFL for Monday Night Football. You have to charge somebody, or TNT, charging for basketball. So I think sports probably doesn't go over the top for a long time, and as you've seen, sports has moved off over-the-air broadcasts, off ABC and CBS, and onto ESPN and TNT. I think you're going to see more and more and more of that with the content guys. They're going to license to Netflix whatever Netflix wants on a 1 or 2 year delay instead of a 2 or 3 month delay. So if you want to catch up on Breaking Bad or Walking Dead, you're going to do it 2 seasons after the episode aired, not 2 months after the episode aired. And
They used to be called syndication.
What's that?
They used to be called the syndication
Yeah,
market.
no, I think actually, and I spoke at the NAB about this exactly. I think the syndication market is toast. So they're the sacrificial lamb. I mean, I think that local broadcasters, syndicators are dead. There's no reason, and Viacom learned this firsthand, there's no reason to watch Nickelodeon if everything that's on Nickelodeon is available on Netflix and Amazon. And they made that happen, and DirecTV decided to cut the retransmission fee, and Viacom was shocked, just shocked. It was their own doing. So, and again, I don't think you can delay SpongeBob 2 years because I don't think anybody cares. But you do care about the blacklist being delayed 2 years. And I actually want to take one issue with the Netflix superior information. On its originals, absolutely Netflix knows everything and they know what their customer wants. When they're showing the blacklist, they know nothing. Okay, it had 20 million viewers a week. What do you need to know? It's like the most popular show on TV. There's nothing to it. They might be a little more insightful on a show like Breaking Bad after season 1 that nobody quite saw, but it was getting 90 Metacritic reviews. Pretty obvious. The content guys, every piece of content except originals, broadcast someplace else first. So it's not like Disney doesn't know the value of Star Wars by the time it comes to Netflix. I mean, they know. So I really don't buy that. And by the way, that's this argument that Gene has with investors. Investors are absolutely convinced because they drink the Netflix Kool-Aid. Netflix knows more about everything than everybody. And you used to work for Nielsen. Nielsen's trying to insert itself into that process and help the content guys figure that out. So the whole world, except for consumers, is against Netflix. Everybody is out to get them. They can't win. Consumers want them to win because we'd rather pay $10 a month and get everything instead of $80 a month. I get that. But where's the $70 go? It's out of the ecosystem. And if it's out of the ecosystem, there's not enough money to make the content we want to see. So the guys who make the content have a vested interest in preserving the ecosystem. The way to do that, I think, is with Windows.
I got a question, actually, Michael, for you. I got a letter recently, check my mail once a month, and it was from Amazon and said, we noticed that you don't use the Prime content. So I thought I was intrigued that they're actually out just making that effort, to your point, that Netflix is going to have more pressure. But this whole Top Gear thing, I cover Amazon more from the e-commerce standpoint, and I'm curious at how big of a deal is that? What does it signify? Any significance?
It's the guy's really popular, and it's a big piece of content, and it's something like 10 million viewers, so it's big, but I don't know if it's worth $250 million. So, each of these guys is trying to get exclusives to differentiate themselves. I have no idea why Amazon is paying for exclusives when they don't charge for their service. That blows me away. Like, why don't they do things on non-exclusive and buy twice as much content? So everything they do that's exclusive suggests to me they're going to roll out a standalone service. And if they do, it's going to be less than $99. And last time I multiplied $9.99 a month, which is Netflix new price times 12, I came up with $119.88. So if Amazon has a service at $60 compared to $120 for Netflix, Netflix has a serious problem. I think these exclusives are a precursor to rolling out a standalone service and then trying to upsell Prime, but I've been thinking that, as you've been wrong on Apple Television, I've been wrong on Amazon standalone for now 2 full years. I thought it was coming in 13, and I don't know what the hell it's taken them so long. So again, the exclusives tell me they're going to do something, but they haven't done it yet.
But with all those companies that we've mentioned, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, add in their Maker Studios, Awesomeness TV, got a lot of people, and even Snapchat having some fits and trying to get their original content pulled together. The picture is changing, and using a word that Dunya used before, tipping point. Sooner or later, there is going to be a tipping point that's going to have more people saying, all right, you know what, it's been building up, I'm cutting the cord. What kind of tipping point is that going to be? Anybody want to hazard a guess? Larry's thinking about it.
Sure,
Go ahead.
no. I'll tell you what we've been hearing from the OTT operators and stuff, and they probably don't want me to say it yet because it's not the public strategy, but there's the top end of the content food chain, the big blockbuster kind of stuff, and everybody's fighting those exclusives. But if you remember when, the real boom in cable really came when cable figured out that you could go to smaller and smaller niches that were passionate about things but yet underserved by media.
Which is E-entertainment.
E being one, MTV at the time being another, on and on and on. What we're seeing now, and maybe they come to us because they know that I've kind of been a niche guy for forever, is looking at these smaller pockets of people where, again, instead of getting one blockbuster that gets 10 million, you get these pockets of, it could be ethnic programming or, anything where people have demonstrated a passion for any subject. Typically, the cost of production is much low. The passion that goes into it is higher. The ability to reach them is stronger because you already know some of the things that they're part of a group or something, and you know how to reach them more economically from a marketing point of view. So we've been really looking at that. Most of my business is in Asia now, but we've been seeing that here from U.S. companies who've been asking us to start looking at those kind of issues for them.
Yeah, and I think actually multiple points through the past few speakers touch upon a point that I'm kind of thinking about and seeing is that, yes, there is a tipping point, and where that tipping point is coming forward does relate to the content that's out there. The business models are going to be reiterative. It's not going to shift overnight, but one of the smaller groups that you talk about, like one of them out there now that is underserved from traditional media is gaming. On the Stark side, like, I'm personally still corded because of sports. If I want to catch my favorite sports teams, there's no way I can do it cordless today. But you look at, there's a big shift this weekend. I'm not sure if you're that familiar with the Jaguars and Bills game, but outside of the local regions for this Sunday, that's being only broadcast on Yahoo. That's a big shift, and whether or not that's the max profit that NFL will get out of it. It's live out of London. So if you're not in the Buffalo region or Jacksonville, then go to Yahoo for it. That's a big shift. Now, whether or not that's as profitable for the NFL as it normally would be, that's in question, right? But they're trying something new. And if you look on the other side of it, Marty mentioned Twitch. Gaming is a huge community that has very passionate end users. that's not served on traditional TV. So when we look at gaming and the amount of audiences that brings, you see huge spikes and crazy audiences that come in for live gaming events, tournaments, and now it may seem foreign, but some of these kids that are in these arenas in Korea are winning $1 million out of a tournament.
But that's again, I think to your point, that's a niche market, right? So they are being served in a way, because if you look at media consumption among a gaming community, right, they very much revolves around gaming. And one of the things that I've looked at over the years is there was these spikes in game console usage, and everybody attributed it to streaming. The spikes were that little layer on top were attributable to increased streaming. But the gaming world, the traditional use of the console as a gaming device, has stayed fairly consistent because it's a very passionate market. And then you have, some of the, I think a few years ago, I called some of the consoles, especially when we got to the 7th generation consoles, I said, they were going to be the Trojan horse and the kind of the media hub. And then those console companies kind of pulled out of traditional content because their money is in the gaming world. So I think, I'm not sure when you say they're underserved, where are they underserved?
I think it's media that speaks about those subjects. So while there may be a lot of people who play gaming on a console, if there's no media that provides information to people who want to know about gaming on a console.
I think it's such an engaged audience. I would hazard that there are specific forums that they go to, and they're very, very well informed.
Larry, on the news site, the only industry that's better covered than gaming in news is entertainment. So there are more gaming websites with journalists than any other topic except for entertainment, more than sports. So and more users. I'd say you're probably at 100 to 200 million people who regularly visit gaming websites. I think Game Informer is only behind People Magazine as the highest circulation magazine on the planet. Kind of crazy.
Wow.
So no, they're actually very well served by print and by journalism. They're not served by video media. You're right, and that's been Twitch that's kind of filled a void, and I think there's a huge opportunity. I agree with you that there's a giant opportunity for that. And Twitch had 27 million concurrent viewers of the League of Legends tournament last year, so 27 million at the same exact instant. That's, yeah, but that's a pretty nice niche.
No, it's huge.
That's,
I was just curious. I wasn't.
It's not FIFA numbers. I realize, but the League of Legends tournament. Just show of hands, how many people actually even know how League of Legends is played? Like, how many people on a side? Well, that's pretty good. That's 4 more than I thought. Okay, good. Yeah, so I'm just saying, it's like there are 93 million as of a year ago monthly active players. So that's also a big niche, but 27 million of them wanted to watch the tournament at the same time. That's crazy numbers.
I've got a few stats here, and that 27 million came from, I don't know where you got it, but piece in the trades the other day. It said League of Legends final in 2014, 27 million people. ESPN says 3.7 billion hours were spent watching or playing esports worldwide in 2014. And 89 million people are regular enthusiasts. That's not a niche market anymore at 89 million people.
Yeah, Twitch is up to 55 million monthly active uniques, which is pretty high. So that's a number of unique people who actually visit that site.
So that 27 million number that you threw out, the Masters by comparison had 25 million people watching it, and the Super Bowl in 2014, because that was part of the article, was 112 million. I think the Super Bowl was 116 or 117 early this year. So fairly significant in terms of esports. And with that, I think, Martin, you have a question or a comment on that?
Well, I want to throw out there, and I want to clarify what I said earlier about this omniscient Netflix. It's not omniscience. They don't know everything, that's for sure. What they do know, and that's the differentiation that I was trying to make, is they have the ability to curate at a level where algorithm and human quality curators can operate together, and that's a requirement for convergence, or I mean that's one of the other words that's out there, the appification of media. And then to your point, I mean we're seeing all these platforms, that new Apple TV that's coming out now, that suddenly does introduce the gaming apps that made the Apple App Store such a big platform. Amazon have gaming on their Fire platform. I don't, from the knowledge that I have, I don't think Netflix is going to turn into a gaming company. We have customers, and I'm allowed to talk about this because it's in the public, in terms of what has been achieved there, where just Microsoft, with their media distribution, is out there on their console at a rate where that is a business to them. MLB with their at-bat app, where that is a revenue stream to them. And in fact, the actual MLB Advanced Media is now splitting into its own entity.
Anyway, moving on for a moment. Unless you have a retort? Any? No. Yeah, Dooney mentioned people having a problem with authentication earlier, and that's something that's going to be needed as we look to the future. There was a report that was in Home Media Magazine the other day, within the last week, said, quote, consumer awareness of the ability to watch programs on devices other than a TV, typically through apps provided free to subscribers, remains persistently low at 36%. Does that number surprise you? Did that seem right, seem high, seem low? Let me repeat that.
Yeah.
Would it help?
Yeah.
Consumer awareness of the ability to watch programs on devices other than a TV, typically through apps provided free to subscribers, remains persistently low at 36%. I mean,
I'd love to see that
The
bell
base.
curve
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
age,
Yeah.
because I'll bet it's 90% of consumers under 20 and 0% of consumers over 80, and everybody else in between. And I think, you're talking about barriers to the continued cable ecosystem. I think millennials are a serious problem for the industry. I mean, they don't watch as much television. They are much more into apps. They are much more into time shift. They're into device watching. I mean, my kids have televisions in their bedroom and watch Netflix on their tablets, and they each have a Fire TV stick. They can turn on Netflix. It's just easier on the tablet because they can touch the app and go. And I worry that they will never be cable customers. That it doesn't even occur to them, like once they're out, and they've never paid a bill themselves. But once they get it, once they decide to sign up for cable and someone says 80 or 90 bucks a month, they're going to say, never mind. And I think that's a serious problem, and I don't know how we ever change that. So I think that the content guys have to figure that out, or they are going to risk going away.
Well, is it the content guys or the business guys?
Well, the guys who make the money out of it,
Yeah.
the guys who charge.
Because the problem is, yes, there is declining viewership among younger people, among millennials. But to your point, and you're using a specific example, but we see this across the board. People are shifting platforms, right? So if they're watching Netflix, what are they on their tablets, or they're watching, any other source on their tablets? They're still watching content, and that should be aggregated. And not speaking out of school at all, because I think I said this last year as well. It really is very important, and at the center of it is to have an adequate measurement system that enables kind of the ability to monetize that content across the platforms. And you do have to have measurement. I mean, I think Netflix, I've been listening to everything you say, and unless I really have been left in the dark, the theory that they should have all of this information is 100% true, just like the theory that you should be able to process set-top box return path data is very true. The reality is, I do not think they do it. I do not think they have robust algorithms that they are using on a daily basis. I could be entirely wrong, but given the lack of data that they present to their clients that I've ever heard of anyone seeing from Netflix, I just don't think they do that, because it's conceptually very easy, and I think it's harder to do. Someone's shaking their head, so I would be curious. But yeah, so I'm surprised.
Larry?
Again, I'll
I'll get
give
you
you
next,
from
I'm
the
sorry.
content creator's point of view. The amount of data I get out of a Netflix conversation far surpasses the amount of data I get out of any other media
Okay.
distributor there. I mean, the stuff that they tell us as what now whether it's true or not is a whole other story. But the data that they bring up into figuring out what it is they want us to start thinking about is much, much deeper than anything we get anywhere
Okay.
else.
Well, then I think that's good to know.
I want to go back to the theme of, what's going to get this really to accelerate. And the typical question that I get is, when's the NFL going to go live over the top? And I don't know, it just seems to be this anchor in investors' minds. And Justin, you'd mentioned some of the stuff that Yahoo's doing. Does anybody here know how NFL's $99 season pass is doing? I think it's the second year they've done it. They basically put all the games, when the second set of games ends, they make them all available. And then they have a condensed version too, in-market, out-market. Is that something that's actually having an impact on how people think over the top?
You have an
Back to you,
answer on
Mark.
that?
I have many friends that are in fantasy leagues, and for them, it's a godsend because they can watch all the games right there and see how their players did. So I know that there's tens of millions of people playing fantasy football, so I know for them, it's all my friends are on it.
Okay.
Well, there was a suit announced yesterday, a class action suit, one of many that's out there for the NFL, and the hypothesis in the article, I think it was in Variety, if not the Hollywood Reporter, about wanting to get every single game, and instead of letting the league sell the rights, let individual teams do it. That way, we can sit here in California and we can watch the Patriots every game we want without necessarily getting the NFL ticket or any other way. Is that a possibility as you look to the future, Gene, in terms of that breaking up?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day is that the NFL, particular, just because it's so big, it seems to be a focus for a lot of people. But I think that they are moving really slow, not surprising, and they realize the significance of what this could mean. And so as far as getting live over the top from a technology standpoint, obviously you can do that. And I think that just as these millennials that we talked about, this curve moves at the pace of a glacier, as that gets older, there's just going to be too much pressure for them not to break up these traditional ways of distribution.
Anybody else? Let's move on. Earnings season. We're knee-deep in earnings season. Netflix has announced, Amazon coming up. Are we going to get stats on HBO Go, Sling, Showtime, and Verizon with their skinny bundles, Sony PlayStation View? I mean, there's a number that they're trying to target of 10 million
This quarter? No.
That was a simple answer.
To all of them.
You don't think any of them will do
Well,
it?
Amazon will never give you, Amazon won't even tell you how many Prime members they have, so they're not going to tell you how many people are watching content. But no, the other guy, Sony's numbers are tiny, $49.
Yeah.
And they're probably 100,000 if they're lucky. And they're not in every market, so it's probably not even that.
I did try to talk to people from HBO and Sling to attend to this, and they said, no, we're not talking about that
No,
right now.
Apple, Gene can talk about it, but Apple just put out Apple Music subscribers yesterday for the first time, and it's 6.5 million, which is a lot more than I would have expected. But the point is, they didn't say we hit the million person threshold 6 months ago and the 5 million threshold a month ago. They waited until it was a big number. I think that's what most people do.
I mean, that's indicative of all the competition out there, from traditional radio to Pandora to iHeartRadio.
6.5 million is an impressive number. Like that's paying subscribers. That's actually a giant number. I mean, I think Rhapsody is still under 1 million. Spotify paying is probably not even close to twice that yet. And Spotify's been doing it for 5 years longer, so that number is really impressive. But they waited until it was impressive because they didn't want to put out a tiny number.
Anything else going to come out of earnings season that's going to surprise us? Cable company, telcos, in terms of their broadband subscribers or people buying TV, what those numbers are going to show in the aggregate?
You've seen a downturn in cable subscribers 2 quarters in a row, which I think is the first time ever, which should be a wake-up call. But again, people aren't wringing their hands yet. So my guess is you're going to have another downturn in subscribers.
Yeah. So sports, in general, makes a big impact on TV. Monday Night Football last night, I had to have, at least at halftime, one of the biggest viewerships because they were showing the Star Wars trailer. Actually, any comment about the servers that were down in, and it certainly wasn't related to either of these two companies, but it knocked selling tickets for Star Wars knocked the servers out in the UK, and then Fandango and movie tickets both had problems last night.
I got a kind of funny side story. I went on a sushi bender last night and got a little sick. And so I was up at 3 in the morning and I found out that they had just released that. And I tried to watch it on YouTube and it wouldn't buffer. And so then I started to think, is this a Star Wars official trailer phenomenon? Or is it just, am I having bad connection? So then I went and I tried some other YouTube content and it worked great. So I thought, this is telling you something. And I don't know what the numbers were. They probably would, the view count would have told you probably more. But I was, just to the surprised and impressed that they're able to pull that kind of continue audience in for the trailer.
So with sports generally, big numbers are always there. Super Bowl 50 is coming up this year, or in a few months, put it that way, in one of the most technologically advanced venues in the world. There's an Olympics coming up in Brazil, which follow the World Cup there. And then in the next couple of years, Olympics in both Korea and Japan, 2 countries that are probably the most technologically astute out there, certainly way up there, if not absolutely at the top. So what are those events, whether it's the Super Bowl or the Olympics or any other future event like that, what kind of change do we expect to see? Because those are all game-changing, pardon the pun, events. And I know from a World Cup point of view, last year that had a big impact on viewership, number of people around the world watching. What can we expect from any or all of those events that I just referred to, or even generally? What's happening sports-wise on those big events? I mean, you talked about the game from London this week. What's going to happen in 2 to 3 years at the Olympics, let's say in Korea and Japan? I couldn't have stymied everybody.
Well, you'll get real-time exhibition. It's just where it happens and how they monetize. So obviously, you've seen that the last 2 Olympics we've had real-time, but it's been on like NBC S, I think it's called, whatever the NBC Sports Channel or something. They've had odd events and they advertise. I don't know how you do it online. I mean, you can make people sit through an interstitial, I suppose, but it's probably harder to advertise over the top. But there are huge rights fees involved, and I think Korea and Japan are especially problematic because the Western Europe and U.S. audience are in a really odd time zone. I mean, Japan I think is 16 hours later than us. So to watch something real time that's happening at prime time means you're getting up at 5 in the morning or something to watch it. And so again, there will be people who do it. I just don't know how these guys propose to monetize. It'll all be available, I'm sure.
I have an odd observation. Now, this goes back to 2008 in the Olympics were in Beijing. They had, I think it was NBC had the rights to it, was broadcasting every event streamed. But the problem was they didn't have like commentary, and it was kind of odd to be watching different events. And I wonder, as I think going forward, if that's going to be kind of one of the evolutions of this. They've been able to give you everything you want. I wonder if they can kind of fill out some of the commentary around it to make it a little bit more appealing in the future.
Yeah, I think that's also from a technology standpoint, that's where it actually is going to become easier as you go to the streaming. You can choose different audio tracks, and maybe it's between the rights and the broadcasters of which audio track and broadcast track you have now. But moving forward, it doesn't matter where you are and what your native language is, but it should make it easier and easier to watch and maximize that content from wherever you are. And in terms of quality, it should be getting better and better over the next several years. I mean, every single major sports event from our network, we're seeing that the average bit rate is significantly higher. We're seeing 30 to 40% jumps in audience from between Sochi to the World Cup. If you're comparing World Cup to World Cup or Olympics to Olympics, it's 4 years. And I mean, I'm not even going to touch those numbers because 70% or higher is commonly seen. But I mean, 4 years of technology is just so vast that it almost becomes meaningless, except for the fact that
It's 2 years. They're offset now. So the Winter Olympics is at 12, and then 14, and 16. So it's
right. But if you compare,
it's not a 4-year period. No.
but if you compare like a winter to a winter or a summer to a summer.
Then you're-
But yeah, I mean, when we compared last year's Sochi to the previous Winter Olympics, I mean, the numbers were, I mean, it's just so many magnitudes. You take it for what it is.
Just from talking to, totally anecdotal, talking to friends that are working on some of those events, I think you kind of hit it, is the multiple feeds, but perfecting the experience of the multiple feeds, number one, with commentary and other things that's around them, and then figuring out how you monetize that stuff. Because before it was just a technology experiment. In order for it to continue, they got to figure out how to make money on it.
And not just post a camera out there and let people just kind of
That I think
watch.
everybody has come to the conclusion was not a good experience, that they have to do something to enhance that. The obvious is you put commentary in it.
So, given there's been a slowdown in China, how is that impacting the future of TV? How is it impacting content from the U.S. into China, stuff that you're producing in China, and how's that impacting other parts of Asia?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's incredibly impactful. I mean, one of the fun parts for me about being in China is pretty much I could dream anything and somehow get somebody in China to finance it. Those days have come to a screeching halt. People are being a little more realistic about business models and all that stuff. So it certainly has slowed down our ability to innovate, not just on what the content is, but the business models that follow the content. Is some of you who may have been here last year know part of what we've been doing there is figuring out how to integrate commerce and TV experiences together and not necessarily make money on creating the content, but making the money on selling stuff. So the market crash has really created a reality for people. Everybody used to believe that we don't need to worry, the government can fix anything. I think everybody there on the consumer level has realized the government can't fix everything, and consumer confidence is way down, so that all the brands that have been in China have kind of looked at their sales forecast for the next 12 to 18 months and reduced those down. Then they got to figure out how to make up the deficit. The easiest thing to take money from is the media budgets. So if you were forecasting, $500 million and you are now looking at 400, you wouldn't just say we need to find 20%. Is you need to find $100 million, and they typically look to the media budget. So a lot of that stuff is significantly slowed. We're finding it's much more prevalent in the TV world. Our internet content creation business has really not been affected by that, and our film business has not been affected.
What about other countries in the region? I mean, some of them, let's say, less developed than China. How is that going to impact countries like, let's say, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, that are populous, and even India, where it's very populous and a little bit further behind from a development point of view?
Sure. The good thing for us, even though our business in China slowed a little, interest from brands in the rest of the region has not slowed. Smaller countries, so the places that big major global brands have been asking us to look at and come up with content solutions for them is Vietnam and Myanmar or Burma. Those two, one of the big soft drink brands, which I won't mention which one, is really gung-ho at having us create content that helps them introduce and build a brand within some of those smaller markets.
A form of product placement? Or blatant product placement?
And not necessarily a form of product placement, but associating the brand with a feeling of certain genres of television.
Marty, I don't know television stats in developing nations, but I know internet stats are, there are many countries, Vietnam jumps out, where 80% of people have internet access through their phone and not through a desktop or a laptop. And I don't know what the numbers are for television, but I have to believe it's pretty similar. So I just, as the topic is over-the-top television,
Right.
I wonder if that presents an opportunity, because you've probably got 1 billion people who have access to internet through a phone. It's a different screen, a different experience, and again, the app, the app economy, but they may not be able to pay, but I think that's probably the biggest opportunity.
So some of the programming is lower bandwidth requirements?
I suppose,
Possibly.
Yeah. I actually don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, when we create, we do a lot of stuff for the web, and we do a lot of stuff for mobile on behalf of brands. And we realize that a lot of times people will be watching on smaller and smaller screens. They're not necessarily watching on the 65-inch. So it actually does affect the way we produce stuff and the way we edit. If a lot of our stuff is a lot of headshots. So when we do music stuff, you don't necessarily see that shot of the whole band, but you see a lot of headshots or single artist stuff, and we do that all in edit. And we actually do our final edit on a cell phone. No, because that's the way we know people will be consuming it. So you want to make sure it looks good there. And a lot of people complain when they watch it on their big TV that it looks odd, but they don't know quite why. It's because there's disproportionate amount of headshots.
So we talk about a lot of M&A going on, mergers and acquisitions, and the recent Dell EMC deal is billed as the biggest tech deal ever, and we're not asking Martin to make any comment about that specifically. The AB InBev and Sab Miller deal would be the third largest M&A deal ever. What other deals are lurking out there that might change the future of TV? You can talk about it broadly or more specifically if you want, and I was not asking for any commentary on the Dell EMC deal. Anybody want to hazard a guess out there? No? What would happen if an Apple or a Google or an Amazon or a Facebook, companies rich in cash, took over, let's say, a Time Warner because Rupert couldn't do it, but one of those other companies might bring some new innovation in there?
I know you're barely old enough to remember this, but Time Warner did that and they bought AOL. That was a brilliant merger. I think that, and I just put out something. I think I was the only analyst who covers Pandora who thought the Ticketfly acquisition was idiotic. I still do. It's a non-strategic business. They have no idea how to sell tickets. And I did the math. It's maybe 2% overlap with their customer base. So I don't get that at all. I get InBev and Miller. That totally makes sense to me. But the only company I think dumb enough to do something big and bold that is stupid is Yahoo. Yahoo has too much cash and has nothing else to do with it, and they're about to get more cash, from their Alibaba stake. I think they will do something dumb. Amazon, I think their largest acquisition is like diapers.com or Zappos.com, like $1 billion. They don't do big acquisitions; they build it themselves. And so I don't think anything. And Apple Beats was their biggest acquisition, I think.
Yep, $3 billion, $3.5 billion.
Yeah, for a real business. Which again, I'm not sure about the strategic fit, but the Beats Music at least turned into Apple Music, so there was something there.
And drove the numbers you were referring to earlier.
And they were a hardware company, and Apple's a hardware company. So I mean, you can't argue with that strategy. But for Amazon or Google to buy Time Warner, like what the hell? What are they thinking? I don't think so. Yahoo might, but I don't think they will.
The story about Apple doing something bigger in content and buying a studio, that was pretty intense 4 years ago. And I think now the focus is more towards augmented reality, virtual reality, autonomous cars, at least if you think of the deepest of the deep pockets. So I think it's less likely that Apple's going to do anything.
Well, I mean, there was a time when Steve Jobs was alive, he was the largest single individual shareholder at Disney, just because of the Pixar
Yeah,
acquisition.
not because he bought Disney stock, though.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
that's
like
exactly, yes.
Ross Perot is the biggest shareholder of GM too, but for a different, not for that reason.
One last item before we go to questions and answers, because I'm sure there's some pent-up questions there. We got an election season going on. What's gonna surprise us? What are we gonna see happening in terms of the election from a TV point of view? That's going to be different and change the face of the country, change the face of elections, and change the face of how TV is delivered, consumed, and used. And as a part of that, at the recent CNN live streamed the debate, this is a couple weeks ago, to its mobile apps and Apple TV, setting an all-time record for peak concurrent streams of a live news event, peaking at 980,000 concurrent streams. What's going to happen? Are we going to see something really big come out of one of the debates or something else election related? Now, this definitely calls for some speculation.
Yeah, so the speculation is you look at the very unfortunate percentage of the voting population that goes to vote. So, the biggest opportunity, I don't know if this will happen, is to really use social media, right? I think social media in the last election and local elections kind of gets a little bit of a bubble. I think there's a great opportunity, and hopefully it will be used to really get people out there voting and get them engaged in a way that tapping into the fact that there is a huge appetite for short form content, right? And limited attention span. And so social media and some of the sites that really are very good at creating short form content might have a great opportunity to get some of those political dollars, because we know that the political dollars are huge when they come into the market. So I would, in terms of speculation, I would say if you're a local affiliate, be careful not to lose too many of those dollars that way, because that's always, a big business for local affiliates. They really try and hold on to.
But from a national point of view, continued live streaming of all events, just make them available, get big numbers on it?
It makes sense. It makes sense. I think there's a particular, and this is, personal commentary, there's a particular circus at the moment to the whole process and the candidates out there that is enticing. Hopefully it will become more of substance, and that might be less enticing to people.
The synonym for enticing is Donald Trump? Partially.
I said that was a personal note, but it is a bit of a circus, and people like the circus.
We've got 12 months and about 2 weeks, so
It's too long.
we'll find out.
Yeah.
Time for questions from the audience. Who's got some questions? Sir.
We were talking about Netflix and their data. Yesterday's Wall Street Journal talked about Comcast having the discussions with networks and Nielsen and others about licensing their data. How significant or valuable do you think that data will be for analysts, for programmers?
Well, it's super valuable for advertisers. So, I think that if you can capture the demographic down to the actual, we had 100,000 18-year-old boys who drink Mountain Dew watching that show. Mountain Dew wants to know that. So that's super, super valuable. And that's where I think Netflix really does have something, and they really, if they ever were to advertise, I think they have a huge advantage. That's what Facebook has. So yes, but that gets you back to the old economy, ad-supported, free content.
Yeah.
And data, that's what Comcast is really going at, and that data is really valuable.
Duke?
Duke Hillman, Adrenaline TV. Larry, what's the penetration of shows from the U.S. and China? Is there visibility, or is it pretty closed down?
Yeah, there's I understand China, the money in China is much younger than it is anywhere, so the consumerism is 25 to 40. That's where the bulk of the money is. 25 to 40-year-olds consume media, although it could be in traditional forms, but they consume it on their laptop. So they will watch half-hour TV shows, they'll watch one-hour dramas, they'll watch two-hour movies. They're not so much into the YouTube like thing. So and the restrictions on broadcast TV in China, there's censorship and quotas and all that. But there's now, of U.S. TV shows that are online in China legally, forget about the ones that are not legal, there's over 100 TV shows there. If you look at what the big shows are, it's Big Bang Theory, Pretty Little Liars, Vampire Diaries, and nothing terribly surprising. You get to the issues of the censorship there. They do very strange things. Like a show like Big Bang Theory got banned, but Masters of Sex was allowed. I don't know how you figure that out. I don't try. But we love that arena because the brands have begun to realize that if they really want to get consumers to buy their stuff, you're better off spending money online. So a lot of innovation happens on the online world there.
So are you saying that the number of TV shows, American TV shows that go into China, the number is not restricted? And then can you talk a little bit about the role of advertisers, in particular P&G, who has a very tight relationship with CCTV, what their role is in bringing shows in?
Sure. Number one, there's no such thing as unrestricted in China. So there is a quota on foreign shows that go there, but it's measured against total hours of viewing. So it basically is not a significant thing. There are hundreds of hours on the internet there of American TV. The P&Gs of the world, P&G is the largest spender there. When we have a new idea for a TV show, I go to Guangzhou and I visit P&G and say, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? They play a very, very large part there. Integration of product into shows, of sponsorship of shows, of endorsements and things like that. Much more prevalent in China than anywhere else. Typically, before we greenlight a show, 60% of the production budget has to be covered by sponsors. Very different than here. So really what it does is it enables us to lower our licensing fee to a platform, and that's why we manage to get a lot of stuff on, whether it be internet platforms or broadcast platforms. And one of the things Marty and I always talk about, we look at China because you could play with the models there that you can't play here. So in one of our shows, I think I mentioned, girl wears beautiful shoes, and say, oh, those are great shoes, where'd you get them? I got them at sparkle.com. We actually own sparkle.com, and we employ a shoe designer, and we're in the shoe business in China, which is really no different than being, in the children's programming business here. You could literally give the program away and then sell a heck of a lot of toys and stuff like that, and who cares where the money comes from?
This gentleman?
A couple comments about, as far as Netflix knowing, Netflix is a software company primarily, not a media company, and they're always going to win. Any software company is going to. Amazon can eat Netflix lunch if they stop trying to act like a media company. If they get strictly into the software business as far as streaming content, they can win. All of Netflix, most of Netflix around the world is carried on Amazon servers. That's like a no-brainer. That's low-hanging fruit. And events, as far as the future, I think with Akademi and whatnot, I could see easily the next 2-4 years live events being carried via VR with commentary. That'd be very interesting.
We're going to find out.
I could comment on that.
Go ahead, please.
First of all, I don't know what any of that means, really. To say that certain person is going to win because they're a software company, I'm not sure I get that or agree with it. Give you, I was the primary consultant for Microsoft for interactive TV, and one of the things I was charged with is how you get the operating system out of just that thing that sits in the office and into people's living rooms. And when I would meet with the folks there at Microsoft, and you had all these geniuses that they recruit from all over, and I go, okay, and now we're going to do this experiment with interactive TV, and we're going to mix this show with that show, and we're going to do this. and I get blank looks, and I go, how many of you guys actually know what I'm talking about? And I get nobody raise their hand. I go, how many of you actually watch television? Okay, and you don't get a heck of a lot. So to say that software companies are going to win over media companies simply because they're software companies, I don't get it. It's software companies who are smart enough to bring in the right brains that understand media and media consumption. Like you take a Netflix who brings in a Ted Sarandos or, people like that. Those hybrid companies are the ones that wins. I don't think it's either the media companies or the software companies will win.
Well, let me explain it to you.
Okay?
Software companies who distribute content via a variety of networks, IP, intellectual property, internet protocol networks, have very deep dives of the psychographic profiles of where human beings are watching whatever they're watching. It's very easy for them to gather all that data and pretty accurately assume who's watching what, when, and where. I don't think media companies come at it from that direction.
I understand what you're saying, and like when we have a conflict, Netflix provides tremendous amount of user data and stuff. But quite honestly, within some of these companies, they don't know how to interpret the data, and they don't know how to act upon that data. I mean, that's why you really do need somebody who could look at the data and go, okay, this is what we're seeing in numbers. Let's try and translate that into a media experience or content experience that people actually put their butt in a chair and watch.
And I think that comment comes from a lot of people, the companies that don't know what to do with all the data they have. Martin, you've got something to say on that before you do. We'll have time for one more question, but given your VR comment, Gene wrote what is probably the definitive report at this time on VR, and we're going to be talking about some of that at my 10:45 panel called The Future of Film. Hope to see you there. Martin, you have a comment on that? Then we'll take one more question.
We've talked a bit about what this knowledge is and what a software company does. And at the end of the day, it's about bid budgets. One tiny piece of knowledge that illustrates that is that from what I understand, and this is at another panel where they were mentioning that when their UI design group was talking about YouTube, they made it clear that their thumbnail size will never change because the actual size of a YouTube thumbnail, the way it's compressed, is the exact size of one internet packet. So from a pure technology perspective, and this is sort of to that point of what is a software company doing with media, Netflix know, from what I know, and I'm clearly not with them, but it's my understanding that they know far more about the streaming quality they need to provide to keep viewers. So if we're talking about an economy of how do they know how much bandwidth they actually need, they know it because they know exactly at what point they lose viewers. So maybe that is absolutely accurate, and I have no knowledge of this, so that's more my personal thoughts on that than anything else. Maybe they have not as accurate a science around the curating that they do, where they have an absolutely accurate science and where other vendors are simply behind because they haven't been doing that from a logistics perspective for as long, is how much money do they have to spend to get their content out there. And then Amazon, in a sense, from their streaming technology, and you may want to make a comment on that, don't ramp up the quality as gradually as Netflix. That's just one little example of if you're watching a Netflix streams, the quality is constantly changing, but you don't see it because they have algorithms that ensure that for a, I'm going to say average viewer, it always looks good enough.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of technology behind it. I know we're short on time.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's kind of like where you're adaptive and with analytics within the players and these companies, like they know what bit rate they would be best to start off with. They can increase it, decrease it. They have a lot of data to get the metrics on what shows they're watching, what's the next show they're watching, and the IP from it. And I think to your point, that's the power of kind of having that software focus, but taking that and having the proper analysis to maximize.
We are running tight on time. This gentleman's been very patient. Quick question. Can we do it quickly?
Really? Don't we have to call a company that spends $3 billion a year on media production a media company? Being an outfit like Netflix?
You guys should talk about definitions on it. We'll talk to Merriam-Webster on it. Join me in thanking the panel for a great job today. Glad you were here.